Welcome to Accelerating Education, a podcast for everyone involved in educating today's kids, especially those who are interested in optimizing educational outcomes. Here's our host, Richard Capone.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Richard Capone, and I'm the host of Accelerating Education podcast. And today I'm so excited. We have a great special guest. It's Michael.craig, and he is a special education teacher and the director of the Horticulture Program at the Charles Drew Transition Center, which is within the Detroit Public Schools Community District. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Michael at CEC in March because he was the Teacher of the Year for CEC, which is quite an award, and I was able to hand him this big supersized check on stage, and then we got to sit together at lunch. So when he was telling me about the program, I was flabbergasted. I remember some of the numbers he was giving me where I really couldn't even comprehend it. And so I was really impressed. And so I said, we need to do a podcast interview, and he agreed. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Great. So let's start off a little bit in the background. Can you share a little bit about your journey? I mean, obviously you're a special education teacher first, but were you always a special education teacher? How did you start? And then we'll lead up to the horticulture program.
Yeah, my journey is kind of unique. I started as a general education teacher. For many years, I taught gen ed 5th grade, and I love that age group. 10-year-olds, they're a lot of fun, and I enjoyed teaching multiple subjects every day. I was teaching in the Hamtramck Public Schools here in Michigan, which was unique because in the city of Hamtramck, there are roughly 27 different languages spoken in what amounts to like a 2 square mile area. So
wow,
that's pretty unique.
That's crazy.
And in the summertime, I was working at a summer camp in the Bloomfield Hills district here in Michigan, which happens to be one of the wealthiest school districts in the nation. So it was during that period of time where a group of parents in Bloomfield actually went to bat for me and got me a teaching position out in Bloomfield Hills. So I transferred out there, which was great. It was a fantastic area. Everything that I could possibly have, I had there, which in effect was unusual because I was always used to doing everything myself. So unfortunately, during my time in Bloomfield, my mother, who was a first grade teacher for 36 years before she retired, she contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and in the course of 8 months passed away, leaving my father in Allen Park, which was about an hour from where I was at in Bloomfield. So wow. My brother being an attorney, he couldn't leave his law firm, so I took it upon myself to find a job closer to my dad to take care of him. And I ended up in Detroit at a school called Bennett Elementary School in Southwest Detroit, largely Hispanic district area. So I spent a lot of time there. And in that period of time in Detroit, the district was under emergency financial management. And it was common that every single year I would receive a layoff notice, and then it would be painful during the summer waiting for my recall. So it was time to focus on how to have some sort of job security. And that was when I entered the field of special education. That was one area that was always a critical shortage area. And there was a way to make sure that I wasn't receiving all those layoffs every single year.
Even back then, I guess there's always been special education teacher shortages. I didn't know that.
Yes, special education, bilingual education, and all those specialty fields that were that most people don't go into. So I started in special education, and I was working in Detroit at Pershing High School, which was a pretty rough area, and trying to teach Algebra 2 to special needs adults while I was banging my head against the wall every night. It was really rough. So it was during the course of the next summer that DPS did what was ultimately the roughest thing, is they laid off every single solitary teacher, 5,700 layoffs. And then they said that we could apply for our old jobs back, but didn't give us an avenue to do so. So imagine 5,700 teachers trying to find a position, principals trying to find spots. It was pretty much chaos. So I was sitting at home one night and I received a phone call from my current principal, Robert Evidesian, who I had known loosely through his work in the county as a transition specialist. So he called me up and he said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I told him, "Well, loosely I do." He said, I remember you and all the work you did for the community in the city of Hamtramck when you were teaching. And I want to talk to you tomorrow about a special position I have at my school here." So I went in to meet with him on a Saturday, and I met with him and a lady named Betty Wiggins, who at the time was the executive director of the Office of School Nutrition for the Detroit Public Schools. So they outlined a program where they wanted to focus on combating the instances of child obesity, early onset diabetes, and hypertension through the school lunch program, while at the same time teaching vocational horticulture skills to special needs young adults aged 18 to 26. So they outlined this program, and they wanted me to run a program, teach special needs students, and put as much produce in the school cafeteria with the help of the Office of School Nutrition as I could. So I went home after that couple hours meeting, and I spoke to my wife, and I said, well, I could either go back to Pershing and do what I was doing and being miserable, or I could try to put a seed in the ground and watch it grow. Big deal.
So did you have any background in like farming or gardening or anything like that?
No, at the time I had no background at all. So all I knew was that I would have a classroom of special needs students, and we would try to produce food.
That's awesome.
I knew that from the meeting that they had what was called a high tunnel, which was like roughly 26 feet by 60 feet, that was an enclosed with plastic skin that I would have as sort of my classroom. And basically I would be free to do what I thought would be best and to start and run a program. I would have the help of the Office of School Nutrition and some staff members, but it would basically be my idea and to run from inception and to grow some sort of program. That's how I started 15 years ago, and here we are 15 years later, and our program at Drew is the largest farm to school program in the country.
So walk us through like a typical day. What is a typical day today? Obviously, I can't imagine starting off. That sounds really crazy. I'm sure you'll have some good stories you can tell us about that. But what does a typical day look like today for your program?
The typical day today is I come to school a little bit early, and I roam the campus, and I make a list of things that have to be done to keep the farm and the produce running. We currently have 2 restaurant clients that we serve, both 5-star restaurant clients in Detroit, as well as the Detroit Salsa Company, a retail outlet that currently has produce in 25 Meyer store locations. So we're growing 5 leafy green products for the 2 restaurants, as well as tomatoes, peppers, and cilantro for the Detroit Salsa Company. So I make my list, and then I sit down, and with my classes that I have, I figured out what tasks can be done by different classes, because in each of my 5 classes, the ability range of students varies greatly. So there are some classes that can do only the basic tasks, and then there are others that I can do some of the heavy duty or more thought-provoking tasks of the day. And that's pretty much how we handle everything, as far as the end result being producing the restaurants for delivery every week.
So, and maybe I jumped ahead too quickly. So let me ask you this. Going back earlier, so obviously you have a lot of different produce you're making, but what was the first thing you guys started producing?
The first thing we started was we started producing leafy greens, spinach products, lettuce. We did some peas. I knew early on that we had to produce products that were easy and fast to grow. Mm-hmm. We don't produce things like pumpkins, watermelons, cantaloupe, because it's unfair to a special needs student to say, here, plant this seed, but wait 120 days for the fruit.
Sure.
It's
And also
unfair.
there's
They don't think like that. They need to see results daily. So things
like
that were fast growing, the Swiss chard, the mustard greens, all that kind of stuff. And we were able to make 18 growing beds in our high tunnel to start.
Wow.
So we always had a place where we would go, and daily the students would see the progression of the greens from the ground.
Got
So
it.
that
And then
was
you would
nice.
have different tasks. Like I imagine there's
Yes.
planting seeds, weeding, fertilizing, or different things like
Weeding,
that.
fertilizing, mulching, harvesting, bagging, all the normal things. We did it all. The students did it all, from seeding all the way to putting it in a box and I take it to the restaurants.
Wow, that's great. And so, as far as like, how did you end up? Like, obviously, your first customer was the school lunch program, right?
Right.
And then from that standpoint, did they? How do you meet that demand of that? Like, they may say, "Hey, we're going to make 500 sandwiches." I mean, how do you make sure that they have the lettuce that you need at the time they need it? So, how does that work?
We pretty much worked with our school restaurant manager, our school lunch manager, and she basically asked what we could do. And then from there, we simply started growing the stuff that we can produce the fastest and the most of. The lettuce and Swiss chard, those are 25-day growth periods. So we could do a couple of different crops, space out the growing time so that 1 week one was due, 1 week the other was due, and at the same time we're taking all the old plants out and reseeding and redoing. So we always had a plan where things were always in transition and always ready to harvest. That was the first thing. And that was tough for me because I had to be super organized, because I had to keep in mind that, okay, when we plant this, 25 days it's ready. Okay, what's ready next week? I had to actually backdate when we could seed, when we should seed, so that things were ready on a consistent basis.
Got it.
But from there, we just kept growing the program. We introduced hydroponic growing about 8 years ago because we had a population of wheelchair students, and I needed something for them to do and for all the students to do during the winter months when it's too cold to grow outside. So hydroponics we have inside. Our gymnasium is currently my classroom, so I have a huge growing space where we can use hydroponics because I can simply shut down the machine, take the channels off the stand, lay them on a smaller desk at the height where the wheelchair kids can actually work them. So
wow.
that was pretty ingenious, where we were able to do that to keep the kids working.
So, did you develop your own curriculum to sort of ensure the accessibility and the meaningfulness for the students? I mean, that's you talking about the different students, different abilities. That sounds pretty complicated. How did you come up with that?
Curriculum plan. What I did was I molded 3 different levels of curriculum to fit our students and their growth. Our students, we have the Council for Exceptional Children has a life-centered curriculum. So I took some of those principles and I molded them in with the Chicago Botanic Association. They have a curriculum designed to teach growing skills to adults with special needs, which are our students. So I simply molded those programs together, created my own rubric for each student with different types of tasks so that I could track whether a kid could not do a skill at all, do it with assistance,
Wow.
or independent.
So I don't know if you...
Also, that at the end of when the student ages out of our school at 26, hopefully I can help find some type of full or part-time employment based on the skills that the kids have mastered.
That's great. You know, it's that's interesting. So I don't know if you realize this, but Life-Centered Education 2.0 is coming out in a month, July 1st.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's actually, we're hosting it on our platform on Let's Go
Wow.
Learn. So
Wow.
I'm gonna look at the lessons and make sure if there isn't an advanced one for horticulture, maybe we could get you to be a guest lesson plan developer, and we could put a more advanced one in there for some of the stuff.
I would love that, because not only are we preparing vocational skills for employment, but those students that can't meet those goals, we're looking for how much functional independence can we prepare these kids for. So that's the other goal. Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's so funny. I didn't even know that. So that's exciting.
And you're also giving me more work, so I'll have to look that over and adjust my rubrics.
All right. Well, here's the reason why, because I bet you people, if I was interested in maybe developing a program like this on my own and listening to this podcast, I'd be thinking, oh my God, can we get what Michael has? Because no one wants to reinvent the wheel. You invented the wheel.
Right.
So you could potentially share that with some of the people who maybe send an email later on or request it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was my position too, because I knew I had to measure some type of skills for data collection for our students. And when I first started, I was scouring the internet looking for something that I could use. So I knew we all had the LEC, and so I was looking for the actual skill level, and I stumbled upon the Chicago Botanical through a conference that I went to out in California. And it was fantastic because it fit perfect. And then all I had to do was just mold it myself and make the time to make all the rubrics so that it all fit.
Oh, that's great. So tell us, do you have any special success stories that stand out in your mind that you could share with us?
Most of the successes that I experience come from the fact that the kids we service have never done any form of horticulture. Very few have even tasted things like arugula or mustard greens or Swiss chard. So it's the times where we're harvesting arugula, and I'm giving things to the students to taste. It's a green taste. So when they taste the spices of the arugula, they're like, oh, wow. And then I bring the chef in, so the chef tells the students how they actually use the products in the restaurant. So they get an understanding of, we're growing this Asian green called Mizuna, so the chef can infuse it into his pasta to make this pasta spicy. And then when he adds the bolognese on top, you get multiple flavor levels. And I tell the kids, that's how he can charge $24 for a plate of pasta.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing.
And then we're making our $5 for every half a pound of produce that we produce, so it's a moneymaker for us. And the relationship being in the restaurant scene is super cool. I mean, not only having one but 2 5-star restaurants, there's nobody in America that has a program that is doing what we're doing. I mean,
that's
it's
amazing.
Special.
So did you get, as you built up this reputation, did you get some requests? Hey, can you guys grow X, Y? Is that how you added some different?
We do that. So the interesting thing is, I took my wife for our anniversary about 7-8 years ago to the new hot restaurant in Detroit called Chartreuse. Metro Detroit Restaurant of the Year, all that jazz. So we went there at our anniversary, and I'm looking at the menu, and I'm like, wait a minute, Recovery Park tomato salad. And I told my wife, I said, wait a minute, I know those guys. Michelle's the grower there. And then there's Beavertown Farms arugula salad. I'm like, wait, I know those guys too. So I brought the waiter over and explained what I did, and he brought the chef owner over, and we got to talking, and I started bringing him samples every other week. And after so many weeks of doing that, he started asking me, can you grow this? Can you grow this? And at that time, we were expanding our hydroponic operation. So it was easy to do it hydroponically, because when you grow things hydroponically, you control everything. You control the nutrients, you control the lighting, you control everything. So it becomes a little easier to grow quick leafy greens.
Yeah.
So after about 6 months or 8 months of delivering to the restaurant, I'm sitting at work and I get a call from our chef, and I say, yeah, Doug, what's going on? How are you? He says, congratulations. I'm like, for what? He says, I just canceled my lettuce purveyor contract from my grower in Traverse City. You're it. So it's like the pressure of a school-based program being the sole producer of leafy greens for a 5-star restaurant is like, oh my gosh. But
So
I knew that
that's an income stream for you
yeah,
guys.
that's an
Is that
income
right?
stream. But the
Wow.
pressure of having to do that, it's like, especially in these young adults, it's like, wow, okay, we got to keep doing what we're doing because we're doing it right. Now we just have to increase production.
So it's making me think if somebody, so initially though, if someone's starting a program, the school program can actually buy your goods as well, right? So that
Yes.
in some sense
Yes.
that could provide the funding because there's money allocated towards buying food and they could just pay the internal producers. That's great.
Right, right. So let me back up a little bit. So when I started the program 15 years ago, after about 4 or 5 years of developing that program where we broke ground on, now we have 7 large high tunnels on our campus.
Wow.
That's when the Office of School Nutrition started hiring a dedicated staff to manage that with the increase in production. And it got to the point where when we broke ground on the farm, we have a 3-acre running farm, the work became too much for our special needs students. So they hired the staff from the Office of School Nutrition, and that's when we branched off from the school-based production of leafy greens to the community-based in the restaurant. So we figured, okay, the Office of School Nutrition now has a good handle on what we developed as far as producing for the school lunch program. Now they can do that, and we can hit a different member of the population, being the restaurant scene. So we've got the community involvement to help provide job opportunities for our kids, as well as the farm production. And so we still help with the labor on the farm, because the students are still learning the skills, but it's there now. We have one huge program with 2 distinct components, which I think is super unique.
Yeah, that does sound unique, and that's great because it is hitting all different, even more areas, and it really is when you integrate it with the school, the students, the community. I think it's going to make it more sustainable and scalable, right?
Yes.
And of course, that's what you want.
Yeah,
You want
so we
something.
have the school nutrition running their part, and then our part, we have the indoor hydroponics, and we also have an outdoor area where we have 200, you got raised bed growing areas and a heated high tunnel where we can grow year round. So we're producing so much food for so many different avenues. It becomes the model program for anyone to kind of look at as far as how to develop it.
You know, what I like about this is I think just going back to the students, it's such an eye opener when you eat fresh vegetables, right? Like you're talking about arugula. I totally know what you mean because I always sort of liked arugula, but when we started growing it on our own during COVID, we put in 2 planters, and then you just pick it right off from the bed and eat it, and it's so tasty, right? And it's amazing. So I imagine students a lot of times don't realize how good this fresh food is, and that changes them for life, right? I mean, that really changes you for life. And
we try to have monthly tastings where we'll have 3 or 4 different types of greens, and we'll go out and we'll pluck some tomatoes from our high tunnel, and we'll make a big, huge salad, and we'll just have a tasting party, so the kids can actually taste what a sweet cherry tomato actually tastes like.
Yeah.
And yes, we do make our own salsas with our own vegetables, so the kids know how to use a food processor. They develop those types of skills. So it's a real eye-opening for all of our kids who never had experienced those things.
Wow, it's amazing. So what advice would you give to other educators who are looking to maybe start their own program? I mean, it's you know, they want to do. They're hearing about this and like, hey, I would love to do this at my school.
The best advice that I would give is that understand that you can't do it by yourself. When I first started, I knew that I needed some advanced knowledge. So I went through Michigan State University has a Master Garden Extension program. So I'm now an advanced Master Gardener. It's a 13-week course. That taught me the basics of soil growth and how to prepare your soil, all that kind of thing. And based on that class, I'm now part of the Master Gardener program where if I have a huge harvest, I can make one phone call and 20 Master Gardeners are at my school helping while they're earning recertification volunteer hours. So having a network is huge as far as if I have issues.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really
Yeah.
cool. And my guess is you probably have this at different states and different areas.
Oh yeah.
There's
Oh
probably
yeah.
similar programs. Okay.
And not only that, through that, I have an association with Michigan University's Department of Agriculture, where all those people are friends of mine. So if I have, we had one issue early on when I first started, where we planted 400 tomato plants in raised beds that were shipping containers that I got for free because I couldn't scratch 2 nickels together when I first started, and they developed this rot at the bottom, all the tomatoes when they first came. So I called up my guy up in Lansing, in Michigan State, and I said, "Hey, what is this?" He says, "Oh, that's blossom end rot." I said, "Okay, how do I handle that?" He says, "You got to pull all the plants and start over." I said, "We just put 400 plants in. I don't have that kind of money. I'm not doing that." So, of course, you can amend things with bone meal and all the other chemicals, but it's something that our kids can't understand, all that kind of stuff. So blossom end rot was basically a calcium deficiency. Well, you tell me, what's the easiest form of calcium that kids know?
Milk or eggshells?
Yes,
Or
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I thought too. So here I am. I go to my local Kroger, and I'm looking at the milk, and I'm like, okay, it's 90 degrees out. I can't use whole milk because it'll stink like all get out. So I bought 30 gallons of low-fat milk, and I made a 50-50 solution with water and milk, and we watered the heck out of those tomato plants. And sure enough, I documented with photographic evidence that the blossom end rot went away.
Oh my God, that's great. I mean,
So I called up my guy in Michigan State, and I said, okay, here's what I did. And he says, "No way. That doesn't work." He said, "That would never work." I said, "I have photographic evidence." He said, "Send it to me." And now my experiment is in Michigan State's Department of Agriculture, a big, huge, case study thing.
so you're now a researcher. You're published.
Yes, you have to, when you do that, you have to figure it out on the fly when you run a program like that.
Wow.
I mean,
great.
we have indoor hydroponics where I had to put the machines together. When we have a leak, I had to figure out how to be a plumber, how to be an electrician. I had to figure out how to do all that stuff.
Wow. Well, hopefully you're not scaring people away, but I guess your point about not being alone. So maybe if you want to do this, get a little training, but also maybe bring in some other people. You could do it as a team effort, right? But it sounds like, and then they can also ask you.
We have in Detroit an organization called Keep Growing Detroit, where for a $25 fee every year, I become part of their network, and they give me free seeds, free transplants, free advice, educational classes. And I'm sure that there are organizations like that in every city in the country. I've worked with Denver Urban Gardens. They have a program that's similar out there, and I help consult with something that they're doing. So that's reaching out in the community is the key.
All right, making those networks.
Yes.
That's great. That makes sense. So let me ask you, what's next for your program?
The next piece is a tough one. It's trying to find the employment activities for our students. It's super hard in this day and age to actually find businesses that will hire special needs young adults. Matter of fact, it's next to impossible. I thought I had that problem licked. There's an organization called Vertical Harvest that runs in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and in Westbrook, Maine, where they actually build 60,000 square foot commercial buildings producing hydroponic vegetables for high-end restaurants, where their business model is that 40% of their workforce are special needs adults. They were scheduled to break ground on the Detroit location in 26 or 27, and they've been to my program, and we were named as the training ground for their Detroit location, which is now belly up because Dan Gilbert from Rocket Mortgage pulled his funding for another project. So there's $325 million to build this program that is now non-existent. So now our kids don't have the opportunities.
Well, okay, so that's the call. You need a new funder for some of this. So maybe someone listening to the podcast, someone who has some philanthropic funding, or who knows.
And I'm trying to figure out, can I find a third-party funder that would fund students directly in my program, so that because school for 18 to 26-year-old is not compulsory, they don't have to be there, can they come to school and earn a living wage while they're in school? from 9 to 3 o'clock? Can they do that being paid by a third-party funder? I mean, I don't know. I'd have to run that through my district and figure all that out.
So let me ask you this. So what would you, like policymakers or other educational leaders, to sort of understand more about some of the challenges you're facing? How could policymakers help you?
The hardest part is that all of our students receive SSI benefits. The average SSI benefits is like $950 a month. I'm still trying to figure out what is the ceiling amount every month that a special needs student can earn before their benefits are affected. No one in my district, no one in the state of Michigan that I've tried to contact, no one can figure out what that number is. Is it $2,000 a month before that they can make before their benefits are affected? Is it $1,600? Because then I can tell employers, okay, kid makes $950 in their benefits, the ceiling is $2,000, pay a kid this much every month.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? So parents with solid benefits, they don't want their kids to work because they're afraid of losing their benefits. Our kids in Detroit, their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. They're using some of those benefits to pay mortgages and car notes. It's a slippery slope to ask a parent to forgive those benefits so their kid can work a job. Because with special needs students come behavioral issues, societal issues, other issues where they could earn a job and a week later get fired for some behavioral incident, and then they'd have to start all over again. And in the meantime, the parents have forgiven those benefits, and now they have to start and reapply for those same benefits, and they don't have the educational or the know-how to do that. They can't figure out how to do that again.
So you need some clarity.
I don't need the hassle.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Mr. Craig. I don't need my kid to have a job. We're good. So,
but of course, you want them to have a job because you want them to learn those skills, to be independent, and
because the bottom line, Richard, is that when they leave our school at 26, if we don't find them some opportunity, they're going to spend 30 years in front of a television. You know, that's why we're busting our humps every single day trying to find a niche where these kids can be successful. But we also need the business community to know that, hey, these kids are out there, and the greater majority of our students can be successful in a job that has a lot of the rote learning.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is fantastic. I think we're almost out of time, but what I'll do is I'll put your information also in some of the descriptions of whether it's a video or whether it's a podcast, so that way people know how to reach out. And I know whether it's something maybe somebody wants to do some kind of direct support, or whether they try to start their own program and they want some advice. So I'll go ahead and do that. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
You're welcome.
This is a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping a lot of other schools will participate in programs. And if people need some help, hey, just reach out.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And until next time, bye-bye.
Accelerating Education is sponsored by Let's Go Learn, maker of K-12 precision diagnostic assessment and instruction software. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out our next episode of Accelerating Education.